Hi everyone, my name is Kim Gi-hwan from Korean Studio. Now, December 3rd is a very important day in Korea, as it's the day of the National University Entrance Exam. And this exam is commonly known as Sunung. Now, Sunung is usually in the early parts of November, but because of the coronavirus, it's been delayed to December 3rd this year. Now, Sunung is the shortened form of the official name for this exam, and the official name is 대학 수학 능력 시험. 대학 수학 능력 시험. And 대학 means university, 수학 means studying, 능력 means ability, and 시험 means exam. But other than official documents, this exam is just commonly known by Korean people as Sunung. Now, be careful with this word 수학, as it can also mean math. And the reason for this different meaning is because the Chinese origin of su in these words is different. In 수학, that means math, su means number. And in 수학, that means studying, su means study. So although they are the same word, they actually have two different meanings. Also in Korea, any form of test or exam you have to take to enter a school is called 입학시험. 입학 is a noun that means entrance or admission to a school. And 시험, as we learned already, means an exam. And in terms of pronunciation, with this word 입학, because of the 피읍 받침 in the first syllable and the 히읗 consonant used in the following syllable, this word is pronounced 입학. Now, 수능 is a kind of 입학시험, but if you have to take an exam or some form of test to get into a primary school or a secondary school, then they would be called 입학시험 too. Now, like 수능, 입학시험 is often shortened to Ipsi. And we can use this word Ipsi to refer to any form of exams or tests you have to take to get into primary schools or secondary schools. But when Koreans use the word Ipsi, it's generally used to refer to university entrance exams. And Sunung is the main form of Ipsi, but a lot of universities and certain departments within the university may have their own tests. And these exams and tests don't always have to be like question-based exams and tests. They may be some essay-based tests or other form of sort of like practical skills-based tests that students have to take. So Ipsi refers to all these different types of exams and tests that students have to take in order to get into universities. And over the years, I think the Korean government and the universities realized that putting all the eggs in one basket, so like putting such emphasis on Sunung alone, is probably not a good idea. So there are now many different avenues that students can sort of take to get into universities. And one of them is assessment of school grades. And this is called 내신. So it's kind of like, I guess in American terms, like GPA. And 내신 has become a very important part of the student's application. And universities will look at other things like maybe language skills, maybe you speak multiple languages, any other sort of extracurricular activities that you do, they will sort of look at that as well. But with, there are all these things that universities will consider, but Sunung, your grades, your mark from Sunung is still the most important assessment tool. So that's a brief overview of Sunung and university admission in Korea. But if you didn't know already, getting into good university is a really big deal in Korea. And the kids are under huge amounts of pressure to do well in the exam itself, Sunung, but also to actually get into good universities. And parents will spend a lot of money on private education. So these are like sort of like private academies that operate outside of school hours. And these schools are sort of designed to help students prepare for Sunung itself, but they may help you with other things like school exams to help improve your 내신, your GPA. And these private academies are often called Ipsi 학원. And there are also other consulting services that help you with not just your school exams or Sunung, but they may help you with sort of like mapping out the things that you need to do, and they'll help you like sort of like work out how you're going to get all these different things so that your application is successful to certain universities. And one of the most successful Korean dramas in recent years is based around this whole culture of Ipsi, and that's Sky Castle. Now, I've seen about 5 episodes of this drama, and it's not a typical drama that I would get into, but basically it's about these wealthy families that live in an apartment complex called Sky Castle. And there's a reason why this apartment complex is called Sky Castle, and I'll come to that in a minute. But this drama basically portrays like the most extreme version of parents putting kids under enormous amount of pressure to study and get into good universities, and spending a ton of money on like this private tutor who's supposed to be like this master of getting kids into good universities. But I think the drama makers sort of decided to intentionally portray like the negative side of this Ipsi culture, because even in Korea people tend to think it's, you know, there are sort of like the dark side to like the Ipsi culture, where parents put up, you know, a huge amount of pressure on their kids to do well, not thinking too much about their mental health and their well-being. And I think this drama did that intentionally. But just the fact that there is this whole drama that's based around Ipsi culture tells you how important or how significant this culture is, how it's such a big part of the Korean culture. And going back to the name of the apartment complex, Sky Castle, the reason why this apartment complex is called Sky Castle, or the drama itself is called Sky Castle, is because the 3 most prestigious universities in Korea are called 서울대학교, 고려대학교, and 연세대학교. And in English, they're called Seoul National University, Korea University, and Yonsei University. And if you take the first letter of each university's name, it's called Sky. And in Korea, these 3 universities are often referred to as Sky Universities. And that's the reason why this drama is called Sky Castle, and the apartment complex that these families live in is called Sky Castle. Okay, so let's now move on and take a look at some useful vocabulary related to exams. Okay, so the word exam in Korean is 시험, 시험. But when we say this word in natural fast speech, the hiet in the second syllable is never pronounced clearly. And I think most of the time, if people say naturally in fast speech, the sound basically disappears entirely. I don't think I would ever say, you might hear a hint of it. You might hear people say 시험, 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 but it's barely audible. And I think when people speak naturally in fast speech, it just disappears entirely. So people will just say 시험, 시험. And how do we say take an exam and sit an exam? And I think with, you know, those phrases alone sort of demonstrate how use of verbs is always very specific to that particular language, because in English we say, or the US English, it will be take an exam, and in British English it's sit an exam. And in Korean we use 2 verbs to talk about taking or sitting an exam, and they are 보다, 보다, and 치다, 치다. Now these verbs are commonly used to say to see or watch or to hit. But in Korean, when we talk about taking an exam or sitting an exam, we use these verbs. So we would say 시험을 보다, 시험을 보다, or 시험을 치다, 시험을 치다. And to say that I had an exam today, I would say 저는 오늘 시험을 봤어요. 저는 오늘 시험을 봤어요. or 저는 오늘 시험을 쳤어요. 저는 오늘 시험을 쳤어요. So to talk about taking an exam or sitting an exam, we use the verbs 보다 or 치다. Now the verb we can use to talk about passing an exam is 합격하다, 합격하다. 합격 is a noun that means pass an exam, and 하다 is a verb that means to do, and we can add this verb to 합격 to make it into a verb. So 합격하다 means to pass an exam. So to say that I've passed an exam, I can say 저는 시험을 합격했어요. 저는 시험을 합격했어요. And in Korean, we also have a verb that we use to talk about getting into a school, and that's 붙다, 붙다. So if you got a really high score in Sunung and that score allowed you to get into 고려대학교, Korea University, then you can say 저는 고려대에 붙었어요. 저는 고려대에 붙었어요. and this means I got into Korea University. Now, the verb 붙다 is actually more commonly used to mean to stick, as in to stick to something. And in Korea, there is a traditional savory snack called 엿. 엿. And 엿 is it's a sweet snack, but it's basically very, very sticky. And in Korea, there is a tradition for people to buy this snack, 엿, to students who are preparing to go to universities. It's sort of given as a present to mean good luck. And in the past, I don't know whether this practice is as common nowadays, but parents would go to the universities that they want their children to get into. And there will be like street sellers outside these universities selling 엿, and parents would buy this 엿 and like they would stick it on the door of these universities because we want our children to 붙다 to this university. We want our children to get into these universities. So it's a kind of like a very superstitious practice to bring good luck, so to speak. But yeah, that's something that they did in the past. I don't know whether it's as common nowadays, but it was a fairly common practice when I was growing up as a kid in Korea. Now, as well as 붙다, which we use to talk about getting into universities, there is another verb that we use to talk about not getting into universities. I guess being rejected. You applied and you didn't get in. And that verb is 떨어지다. 떨어지다. 떨어지다 literally means to fall off. So it's kind of the opposite of 붙다. Instead of sticking, you have fallen off. So if you got a score in Sunung and with that score you applied to Korea University, but you weren't accepted, you were rejected by the university, then you can say 저는 고려대에 떨어졌어요. 저는 고려대에 떨어졌어요. And this means I didn't get into Korea University. So to talk about getting into universities, we can use the verb 붙다, 붙다, and to talk about not getting into universities, we will use the verb 떨어지다, 떨어지다. Okay, so today we looked at a brief overview of Sunung and university admissions in Korea, and we learned some useful expressions related to exams and getting into universities. Hope today's video was useful, and I look forward to seeing you soon again. Bye-bye.